Demand for copper continues to rise year after year after year. For many years, the experts have been predicting this supply crunch that's coming in 2025. All of a sudden, there's going to be a wide gap between the amount of supply and the amount of demand. And that's going to persist for many years going forward.
Copper's price has soared in recent months, recently rising above $5 per pound to a new all-time high. And while pundits and economists trade forecasts for price, demand, I want to take a different approach by going to the front line, so to speak, to get a better understanding of where the copper industry may actually be headed. Today on the pod, I'll welcome Steve Robertson, a geologist with more than 30 years experience. He has played key roles in building and advancing mineral projects from exploration through to production. In 2016, Mr. Robertson was awarded the E.A. Schultz Award for Excellence in Mine Development for his leadership role in developing the Red Chris mine. Today, he's involved with a few different mineral projects, but remains focused on the copper industry.
Steve, thanks for joining us. Can you give our viewers a quick background on your history in the mining space, specifically as it relates to copper?
Sure. Well, I'm an exploration geologist by training, and I worked most of my career as an exploration geologist, focused mainly in British Columbia. I worked for 24 years for a mining operator developer called Imperial Metals, and we did a lot of good work there, developing and operating mines. My big milestone at Imperial would have been the deep drilling at Red Chris. So when we took over Red Chris, it was thought of as another little BC porphyry, and we did deep drilling there for 5 years and proved that it was actually a world-class giant. And that was really an excellent thing for me because it really inspired me about deep drilling and big copper deposits.
When you say deep drilling, how deep are we talking?
All the holes that we drilled at Red Chris were more than 1 kilometer deep, and the deepest one was over 1,800 meters. So these are really deep holes. And, you know, I really think that represents the next generation of discoveries. The discovery rate in copper worldwide has dropped off to almost zero in the last 15 years. And the big reason for that is because all the big, easy ones that are sticking out on the surface have been found. And so the next generation of discoveries are going to be ones that are a little bit hidden and a little bit more difficult to find. And it's going to take a lot of investigative work by geologists and some deep drilling.
Are those factors what make you bullish on the copper price? Like when you look at the imbalances right now in the market, you know, and you look out 6 months, 12 months, I mean, this whole decarbonization, the backbone of it is copper. And we simply don't have enough of it. There aren't any new mines coming online, as you alluded to. What do you have price targets? Like, do you have an internal price target in your mind? And are you looking at this data, or are you just focused on finding more of it?
Price targets aren't exactly my area of expertise, so I'll maybe reserve my opinion on that. But I'll tell you, I do know enough about economics to know about supply and demand. And the demand for copper continues to rise year after year after year. For many years, the experts have been predicting this supply crunch that's coming in 2025. All of a sudden, there's going to be a wide gap between the amount of supply and the amount of demand. And that's going to persist for many years going forward because it takes a long time to get new copper projects into the pipeline. And there just aren't any big ones looming out there that are going to be adding to production in the near future. So that's why exploration projects are so important to the market at this point.
Right. So with Imperial Metals, you've got experience across the spectrum from exploration, discovery, production. The International Energy Agency came out and said it takes about 23 years to bring a copper mine into production. What aspects do you see, like what ingredients do you need for a project to be successful?
Yeah, well, you're right. The amount of time that it takes from discovery to production is horrendous at this point. And I think that we're going to have to see some sort of pathway that is going to be able to not take shortcuts, but be able to leap over some of the unnecessary delays that are related to development of copper projects in particular, but all mining is, you know, they're all commodities are facing the same issues in terms of permitting and community acceptance and that sort of thing. And, you know, there's certain things that you can do in terms of early engagement with the communities. That's really important, and being able to understand the end when you get started. So making sure that you get going with some of the metallurgical work and other engineering studies early on in the project that are going to be necessary later on that can help you get along the way. But yeah, the permitting process is way too long now.
With your experience, when you look out at the copper landscape, where are you seeing projects being rewarded? Where are you seeing success? Where are the bright spots in the industry as it stands today in 2024?
There's very few examples out there of big success stories because there's just so little being found. But, good example of success recently was Hercules Silver. Those guys picked up an old silver district down in Idaho, and they drilled below it and found some beautiful high-grade copper mineralization, what looks like a very large copper porphyry system. Mm-hmm. And, their stock was a 10-bagger in a matter of a few days. And so that's the sort of hunger and the appetite that we see out there.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Arizona is clearly the winner in the U.S. They do about 70% of the copper production domestically in the U.S. Do you see going forward with all the geopolitical strife in the world, how important is it for the United States to have growing domestic production?
Oh, it's absolutely critical as far as, and thus the name critical metals. The problem that we've got internationally is quite often you go to work in many countries and you wake up in the morning and have a new partner you didn't know about the night before. And, the very real example of that is down in Panama, where one of the greatest copper mines ever to be built is now sitting idle because of the political uncertainty in that area. That's why we need to make sure that the stable jurisdictions, Canada, the US, and, South American countries, some of them, we need to make sure that that's where we're concentrating our efforts to find new copper deposits and build new mines there.
You're active in the space. You're playing this market. You're the president of Prismo Metals, a junior mining company that's operating down in Arizona. It's important to mention that Prismo Metals is a sponsor and client of Pinnacle Digest and this podcast. And Pinnacle Digest parent company owns shares and warrants of Prismo Metals. Now, talk to me about your project down there. I know you guys are quite excited.
Yeah, well, the project that we've got in Arizona is really one of the most exciting copper plays I've seen in many years. This is partly because of its location. It's in one of the greatest copper belts on the face of the planet, the Arizona Copper Belt, and partly because it's so close to a great discovery called Resolution. So Resolution is one of the most exciting discoveries in modern mining history. It's an absolutely tremendous copper deposit, 1.6 billion tons of 1.6% copper. So high grade and huge. But it's one of those copper deposits I was talking about that's not sticking out on surface. The top of the deposit is 1.2 kilometers below surface, and the bottom is 2 kilometers down. So it's a deep one. But the effort to go and find that was certainly worthwhile because there's such a tremendous endowment. Like at its current state, it's over 60 billion pounds of copper, total contained copper, and it hasn't been completely drilled off at this point. So it could be significantly larger than that even. So this is exciting for us because we view our project, Hot Breccia, is only 40 kilometers to the south, and we think we've got a very, very similar structural setting and very similar geology to Resolution. And so that's really the driver behind our exploration thesis, is being inspired by Resolution.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no denying that's a world-class asset, but it's taken them. They've been tied up in red tape for 20 years. Rio Tinto, BHP is a minority partner. They've spent over $2 billion on that project, and there's no production date in sight, right? They're tied up with Native American concerns, environmentalists. It's completely on hold. What makes Hot Breccia different? Why will that not happen to Hot Breccia if you were to make a discovery?
Yes. So a couple of things that are different with Hot Breccia. Number one, some of the delays that have happened with Resolution are related to engineering. And, as I mentioned, the top of the deposit is 1.2 kilometers down. The top of our perspective horizon is 400 meters down. So we're looking for something that's significantly more shallow. So fewer engineering challenges. The rock is 140 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, at Resolution. It certainly wouldn't be like that a kilometer down at Hot Breccia. So we need to keep that in mind. But the other thing is, I think that the fact that the companies have spent $2 billion to get it to this point without even the assurance that it's going to go into production is a testament to how badly the big copper miners need these types of deposits. They need to have something like resolution in their pipeline to maintain their status as one of the most largest copper miners. So these deposits are highly sought after. And Arizona is such a great place to work because we have all the majors, except maybe Codelco. All the major players in the copper market are working in our backyard. So there will be a lot of eyes on us.
Speaking to that, you guys are down there in the land of giants, land of elephants. You've got Sarco, Freeport-McMoRan, Rio Tinto. They're all there. What do you think you would need to discover, to drill, for them to start paying attention to you?
Well, I think, any sort of intercept of decent grade mineralization at depth is going to get people's attention. Now, obviously, a mine isn't made with one drill hole. So we need to be able to repeat that and establish not only grade, but size. But I think that there's probably plenty of good examples in Arizona of the types of deposits that we would be looking for. Just 35 kilometers to the south of us is San Manuel. And San Manuel and Kalamazoo, basically it's the same deposit that's been faulted apart. But San Manuel was North America's first block cave. And so this was a deposit. They started with an open pit and then they went underground and block caved it. And, it's a good example of the type of deposit that we could find. 400 million tons of 0.7% copper was San Manuel. That would be a company maker type deposit. But obviously, our eye is certainly looking for maybe not something as big as resolution, but even a portion of resolution could be a company maker deposit as well.
So looking out to this summer and the season, how many meters are you going to drill?
Our first program that we'd like to drill would be about 5 holes, 1,000 meters each. So a total program of about 5,000 meters. Now, it's a little bit uncertain because we really don't know where the bottom of the target horizon is in this area. So these first drill holes are going to be really important to us. But we think that would be a pretty good, give us an idea of what it is that's down there. We're lucky because we're starting with a running start. We've got these breccias on the property. That's the name of the property, hot breccia, that have been Mother Nature's sampling program where these rocks from at depth have been broken up and then thrust up to surface, and we've been able to sample some of them. Our crews this year found a fragment of mineralized skarn in the breccia that graded over 5.5% copper. So we know that there's a strongly mineralized system down there. It's just a matter of where exactly it is and how big it is.
What is a breccia for all of our non-geologist viewers?
Well, a breccia is a bunch of broken up rocks that have been thrust into an area and then frozen in place. In this case, there was probably a case where there was a reaction of superheated hydrothermal fluids that boiled and created gas. And so there was the need for a pressure release. And it was these things happen in very violent and very quick time frame. And it broke up the rock down below, thrust it up to surface, and then the magma that went with it solidified and froze everything in place. Some of the rock fragments that we find, we suspect that they're, based on our regional mapping, they're probably coming from at least a kilometer depth. So that really speaks to the amount of energy that's in the system. And, the systems that have a lot of energy have a lot of heat. They have, a lot of hydrothermal fluids with a lot of metals. And so that is the type of environment that could be highly productive for us.
So what historical work has been done to date? And when do you think some of this drilling and some of these results will come out?
Well, the historic work is really interesting to us. In our business, we always stand on the shoulders of those that went before us. And there was a guy by the name of Larry Barrett that went out and did a master's thesis. He mapped all the rocks on our hot breccia property. And he found these breccias. And then after he was done doing his master's, he went to work for Kennecott. And he convinced them that, hey, there's probably a big hydrothermal system at depth here. We should go and drill this. And so in the 1970s, they drilled half a dozen drill holes down into the hydrothermal system at depth. And sure enough, they went down through the cover unit, which is about 400 meters thick. And then when they got into the carbonate rocks down below, they found this beautifully altered skarn with strong copper mineralization in it. We don't have all the grades from the old drilling, and the core has been destroyed. but we've got enough old records that we know that there was some very strong mineralization that was found there. The party came to an end, though. There was a mine that was immediately next door to us called the Christmas Mine, and it shut down in 1982. And everybody's attention didn't stop immediately. I think everybody's attention just drifted away over the years, and eventually the property was dropped. And so we're the first company to come in over 50 years with a modern exploration toolkit to be able to pick up the exploration where it was left off and really see if we can hone in on some of the high-grade mineralization at depth.
Yeah, I was reading about the historic Christmas mine. It had, production of about 481 million pounds of copper, and it graded just, about 1.2%. How close is it to your project, the Hot Breccia, and are there any geological similarities?
Yeah, well, the thing about Christmas, immediately next door to us, but the rocks, it was a great mine. It's operated for several decades.
When you say next door, Steve, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers?
Well, the properties are immediately adjacent to one another, but our area of exploration activity is probably about 5 or 7 kilometers away from the open pit where the mining started over on the Christmas property. So very nearby. And the rocks that hosted the ore mineralization at Christmas Mine, we've got those same rocks over on our property, but there's been a fault that has dropped them down. And so those rocks over on our property, unfortunately, we can't go and map them because they're covered by 400 meters of volcanics. And so we have to use all the tools that we can get our hands on to be able to try to figure out where are we going to find mineralization down in these carbonate rocks that are down below. And luckily, there are some tools that are going to help guide us in that direction.
That makes sense. And when should investors expect news from Hot Breccia?
Well, there are going to be a number of catalysts along the way. The first catalyst, of course, will be announcing that we've got our permit in place. We think that we're very close to achieving that. And then once we've got the permit in place, we're going to be able to initiate the drill program. Each drill hole, these drill holes are deep, and so they take a long time to drill. They can take up to a month each to drill. And so, 5,000 meters, 5 drill holes, we would probably take the bulk of the rest of 2024 to drill. And then we, of course, would release the results along the way. So, hopefully lots to keep the investors engaged.
Now, the company has 2 other projects, both located in Mexico. Let's talk about Palos Verdes first. What are some of the highlights? I know it's a silver project. Give us some of the highlights on that project.
Yeah, Palos Verdes is in Sinaloa State, and it's a silver project that was brought into the company when it was first formed over 4 years ago. And since that time, we've been surrounded by another company called Vizsla Silver. And Vizsla's had a tremendous amount of success on their ground. And they've been very good neighbors for us to have because we've got a very cooperative approach to exploration on our ground. They're investors in our company and want to see our project advanced. We've done some diamond drilling on our properties. We've been able to identify the vein near surface, and we've been hitting similar type results to what Vizsla's been hitting on their property. But we need to now take a step back to see if we can actually drill deeper on those same veins and extend them to depth. And to do that, we're going to need to actually drill from Vizsla's property onto our property. And that's probably going to happen in 2024.
Yeah, that's rare. So you're working, like you said, in cooperation with them, but are you guys sharing data? Is that something you can comment on?
We actually have a technical committee that's set up. It's got our chief exploration officer and one of the founders of the company, Craig Gibson, and Peter McGaw, who's a widely renowned geologist, an expert in CRD deposits, and especially in Mexican geology, he's very much an expert in that. And then the third part of the technical advisory committee is actually Jesus Valador, who is the VP of exploration for Vizsla. And so that really puts us in a position to be able to consult with them deeply on the results that we've got and what our plans are going forward.
Now, what about Los Pavitos? This project seems a lot more early stage. Is there going to be some of the budget allocated to this project in 2024?
Yeah, Los Pavitos is a wonderful project. It's sort of the third leg of the stool, if you will. And it's the southern extension of a well-known orogenic gold belt that stretches all the way up into California in the U.S. And there's a number, millions of ounces of gold that have been established along this belt. And the project was very conceptual in its beginning, and we've had a very successful initial drill program down there where we've actually intercepted about 6.5 meters of 10.4 grams gold and 35 grams silver. So, that's proof positive that we've got a significant high-grade gold mineralized system on the property. And I think at this point, we need to step back, make sure that we do things in a very systematic way. And it's a very large project. And right now, what we need to do is get our geologists out into the field, do some mapping, prospecting, some ground geophysics and things like that to make sure that we are using our drill as effectively as we can in the next program. This business is all about risk reduction and mitigating risk. And when you've got 3 excellent projects like we've got right now, it really does a lot to reduce the risk for investors.
Now, I got to ask, the Mexican election was a few days ago. The peso sold off, 4 or 5%. A lot of silver companies took it on the chin. Are you concerned about new policies, windfall taxes? They're talking about mandating 5% plus profit sharing. Different things are kind of being discussed and on the table. Is that of any concern to you?
Well, of course, it's of concern. It's something that we watch very carefully. But, what I will say is I know that a lot of the GDP in Mexico is derived from mining. Mining is very important to that country. And I don't think that anybody has any intent to shut down mining overnight. This is there are going to be certain areas that are going to have challenges. We've always found it to be a very supportive state or I should say jurisdiction to work in. And, it's still on my favored list just because the geologic endowment there is so incredible. I will always be comfortable going to work in Mexico. I love it there. And, so many companies have had so much success finding things there. We're going to continue to manage our operations very carefully down there, but I don't have any serious concerns that we're going to be facing big issues moving forward.
Now, lastly, Steve, as investors look out 3 to 6 months from now, what should they expect, with respect to news flow? Well,
news flow, as I said, is going to start with talking about getting the permit for hot breccia. Mm-hmm. On the heels of that, we'll need to raise some money to go out and start drilling, but we're fairly confident that process is going to go fairly quickly. We're already talking to some of the local vendors and diamond drillers about getting ourselves set up so that we can get a drill out on the ground as soon as possible and get the drilling going. I mean, that's the truth machine.
The terrible truth machine, right? And could that be as early as June, or are we looking at July for drilling hot breccia?
No, I think that it's possible we could be drilling as soon as the end of June.
Well, thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you on the pod, and hope to see you again.
Okay, thanks. It's great to be able to come out and tell the story, so I appreciate it.